From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov.
So Denton/Jan wants to know, what's the story behind the Don LaFontaine voiceover clip in my show intro? And so that is actual Don. That is real Don. That is IRL Don, not AI Don. And Don LaFontaine was the person who told me that I could do voiceover. So it's this is all his doing. Me being here right now talking to you, me having this career, it was really inspired by Don LaFontaine himself. So what happened was in 2006, I had hired Don to do some work for me. He did a book promo, which of course sounded amazing. And then the company I was working for at the time, I was director of development for a brand new startup podcast company, and we had a couple of projects, and they're like, "Wow, can you get Don for us?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And of course, I hired Don to do a couple of promos for us, and it was an amazing experience working with Don. He ended up doing a couple more book promos for me, and he was such an amazing, warm-hearted, beautiful human being. I mean, just a great, great guy, a total mensch, and funny, charming, and it's like he has that big tough guy voice, really, but he's just like a teddy bear of a human being. And I just love talking to Don. And at some point, I'm just of course fawning, and I was just like, wow, I would do anything. I would love to do what you do. You have the coolest job in the world. Voiceover just seems like the coolest job ever. I could never do what you do. And he says to me, he's like, Mark, you could absolutely do what I do. And I'm like, right? And just like I can't even wrap my head around it, honestly. And so that was during a time when Don and I, we'd trade emails every so often, and there was always some kind of funny thing going on. And I would send him like these clips of me like doing voiceover, but half of it was really just kind of like very satirical and very jokey, because that was my career at the time, was more really comedy based. And so there was nothing really serious. And I'd send him these funny voiceovers that I do for stuff. And he always was very supportive of it. He was like, "Oh, really clever, really cool and funny." And it was wonderful getting this feedback from, the iconic master, the guy who invented the movie trailer voiceover. And it meant the world to me. And so what happened was, right around the holidays, 2007, like I sent him, just like an email, like, "Hey, happy holidays, blah." And I hadn't heard back. And, I just like, oh, well, he's he's too busy. And then months went by. And then I finally got an email from him. It was actually kind of like a group email sent out, I guess, to his entire list. And he was explaining that he'd been out of touch. He was apologizing for being out of touch with everyone because he had been really ill. He apparently he was exercising one morning, and he felt like shortness of breath, and his voice was he had lost his voice. He described it as like sounding like the king of Munchkinland, and he went to the doctor, and they found cysts on his lungs. He had a form of emphysema, and what happened was air was leaking out of his lungs and into his chest cavity, and collapsing his lungs. And so he had an operation, and the recovery kind of went bad. Like, it was good, and then it was bad, and then he sent out this email later on. I think it was around the summer, and apologizing and saying, I've been trying to work. I've only been able to work a couple of days. My voice isn't really there, and really in this town, in this industry, you don't tell anybody that you're sick. Any reason for someone not to hire you, you never throw that out there. So, apparently nobody really knew, other than like the people closest to him, his agent, his family and stuff. And so he sent out this email that he was like, it felt kind of optimistic. Like, he's like, "I'm now recovering from the recovery." And, I felt like, okay, well, he'll get back on his feet. And then, about a month later, he passed away. And, it was actually really crushing when he passed, because I felt like I felt like he was this I mean, he was so larger than life, but for what I was doing, even at the time, even though I wasn't doing voiceover, I was doing a lot of audio content and I was on a microphone like all the time. And just really just his words just kept coming back to me. Like I always wanted to do voiceover. I'm like, Don says I could, so life pulled me in a different direction. I ended up working on a TV show and writing a whole bunch of books and stuff. And then at some point, like I was getting burned out from this cycle of what I had been doing for the last like couple of years. And I'd written a book, and the book had actually started to sell pretty well, based upon the fact that there was a previous book about the same topic that I had done that had an audience. And so because I was like, you know what, I don't feel like waking up at 4 a.m. and doing radio interviews with morning radio on the East Coast. I don't feel like doing promo for this book. So I'm going to spend some time doing voiceover. I just felt like the spirit of Don was calling out to me and saying, like, do it, do it before you can't. And so I did. And fortunately, like things kind of developed and took off very, very quickly for me in my career. And but it was always like it wasn't like Don gave me my big break, but he gave me my big push. He was the first person ever to tell me that I could do voiceover. And this is back when my voice was completely different. My voice was kind of terrible at the time too, I think. And but he heard something in there that I didn't. And to this day, the reason I keep his voiceover. And it's funny because I remember getting these voiceovers from him, these that ended up becoming part of the promo. There was the old voiceover from, if you look back, like 100 episodes ago, where it's like the no BS, no pants intro from Don. And I remember getting that one from him in my inbox and just like laughing so hard. It's just like he really was a wonderful, charming human being. And so I keep his voiceover in my show as my ultimate tribute to the man who I feel like was really the most influential person in me starting this career, and just really my tribute to the master. So that's the story, Don LaFontaine. I do. I miss you, Don. So anyway, so a couple of people have asked me about this, and I've answered privately in just emails and messages, but I thought I should actually answer this on camera, so that yeah. Anyway, but Nation, and that's the thing. He was so iconic. I mean, how many other big movie trailer promo voiceover people can you really name? That's how iconic he was in the Geico commercial, and then, doing the announcer gig for the Oscars and stuff. I mean, yeah. All right. Don LaFontaine, man. All right, Nation. Leave a comment. Until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black.